My Hero Academia chapter 353. We talk about what happens to Toya. Is it the quirk that awakens, or maybe a whole new quirk that he himself didn't know about? Or maybe something completely different? Also, only a small percentage of the people who watch our videos are actually subscribed. So if you end up liking this video, consider subscribing. Please enjoy this video. Let's go! The new My Hero Academia chapter starts seconds after the end of the last chapter. It looks like both can't fight anymore. However, considering the circumstances of the fight, it's safe to say that the true winner is Shoto, because as Burnin reported, Dabi was detained. That was the main goal and Shoto achieved it. A victory for the heroes. However, something interesting happens to Toya. This could change everything, depending on what exactly will happen. Dabi wonders why he's still alive after all this, and then a glowing sphere appears on his chest, or rather it looks like it's glowing from the inside, almost as if his heart begins to glow. This scene is really without any context. Everything we see is so transparent that anything is possible. But we have chosen 4 possibilities that we think are likely. To do this, we first need to consider a few things. First of all, the appearance of Toya's body. We know that Toya usually has a huge scar that runs from his chest to his stomach and horizontally through his torso. At this moment, however, we don't see that scar. Now there are 2 possibilities here. Either this is ice covering Toya's body, either from Todoroki's ice attack that he did at this exact spot, or it is ice that Toya may have even somehow produced himself. The second possibility is that Toya has started to regenerate for some reason and this is actually his healed skin. Both are possible if you look at the panels, but I think we can assume that what's happening with Toya right now, namely the mysterious light that came out of his chest, has something to do with the fact that we don't see his scars anymore. If that's the case, then we can definitely assume that it has something to do with regeneration, which will then also fit with Dabi's question of why he's still alive. If he's even asking himself why he survived that, even though what he did would have led to his ultimate death because he literally burned his body until it started to disintegrate, to the point where we even saw bone and muscle, then I think it's pretty reasonable to assume that the light might actually have something to do with regeneration and that his scar might actually have healed for some reason. And with that, it could either be a quirk that was awakened that allowed Toya to heal himself, or perhaps a hidden quirk that was implanted in him and only activated when Toya was near death. But even if much speaks for a healing ability, I wouldn't rule out the possibility that it could be ice after all, especially because the pattern kinda looks like ice. And it's also a fact that Shoto hit him with an ice attack right where we can't see the scar anymore. But for now, let's focus on what the light source could be. When you see something like this in the world of My Hero Academia, it can only ever mean 2 things. Either it has something to do with a quirk or with the body. If for example Dr. Garaki has worked on his body before, which he did when Toya was very young, so it's both possible. In this chapter we also saw a flashback in which Dabi turns away from All for One and says that he doesn't need any new quirks, which suggests that he was offered to receive a second quirk. The fact that this was mentioned in this chapter could indicate that what is happening with Toya right now could actually be a new quirk or an awakening of his quirk, because it would be ironic if he refused the offer, since he only wanted to use the fire that his father would not accept, but then either already had a hidden quirk in him or maybe even activated a second quirk or his true quirk awakening, which may have a completely different attribute than how Toya had always tried to use it to impress his father. So let's go through all the possibilities. Number 1, All for One somehow managed to give Toya a quirk without him realizing it. It could have been recently, or maybe when he was in a coma after All for One saved him. Or maybe Dr. Garaki also implanted this quirk in him, basically like a Nomu. Here of course it could have something to do with regeneration, which will explain why we don't see the scar anymore. Number 2, there could be another self-destruction quirk in him in case he fails his mission, as was the case with Lady Nagant. We know that Dr. Garaki knows how to duplicate a quirk, so it's definitely possible but unlikely in my opinion. Number 3, Toya awakens his true quirk. Maybe it has something to do with ice because we know that his hair was red when he was born, which indicates that he has his father's fire quirk, but then became white over time, just like his mother, which indicates the ice attribute and would also fit with his quirk factor that he inherited from his mother. Basically he has a body made for ice but a fire quirk, which is the reason why he can't handle fire and keeps getting hurt. The fact that he actually has a quirk quirk factor, which is meant for an ice ability, is actually proof that he should have an ice ability, because that's how quirks work. When a person inherits a quirk, their body adapts to the quirk by obtaining a quirk factor that changes the body based on the ability. Among other things, the ability to use the quirk itself is part of the quirk factor, as is a protection mechanism that prevents the user from hurting themselves when they use their quirk. This can be either a limitation or genetic modification that allows the user to use their quirk safely. So if he has the quirk factor for an ice quirk, then he should also have an ice ability, because that's just the way quirk factors are believed to work. Maybe Toya actually inherited both abilities just like Shoto, but for some reason Toya's body doesn't quite function like Shoto's. Whether this has a psychological or physical reason. So maybe he also has the quirk half cold half hot, or something else to do with ice and fire, but because he looked up to his father, he always ignored the ice attribute he has, even if he did it unintentionally. It could be that because of the way this fight went, he gained some sort of respect for Shoto and his ice ability, and therefore stopped focusing on Endeavor and his fire and started focusing on Shoto and his ice, which then activated his own ice attribute if we assume it is really a mental issue. Or maybe something about his body blocked his quirk factor from activating the ice ability, something like a genetic error. Maybe this genetic error also suppressed the quirk factor for his fire ability. And since Shoto literally hit Toya's body with an ice attack, this may have triggered some changes in his body. Perhaps the ice particles came into contact with Toya's body because he had large open wounds, which may have caused the defective genes for his ice quirk to begin functioning. While this will not explain why he regenerated, it might explain why he survived, if we assume that the ice in his body cooled his body down in time before he burned himself completely. Another possibility is the Blue Phoenix theory, which has been circulating for several years and states that Toya has the ability to regenerate his body with the help of blue flames. Considering that Toya wonders why he didn't die and that it looks like his scars regenerated, I wouldn't rule out that possibility, although I think the ice quirk makes more sense if we just get a proper explanation as to why he survived. And number 4 is actually something that can be combined with one of the other options, but with the difference that the light has something to do with the fact that Toya is actually a vessel for All for One, just like Shigaraki. Maybe for some reason All for One started the same process with Toya as with Shigaraki as well, to make sure that if something goes wrong with Shigaraki, he still has a plan B with another vessel that is just as dark and negative as Shigaraki, because that is the requirement to steal One for All, and as far as we know, the only two characters that seem to have that kind of negative emotions are Shigaraki and most likely Toya. My point is that it is possible for this option to be combined with one of the other options, because the only reason All for One has said that Toya isn't really suitable as a vessel is because his body is basically falling apart. But for some reason, Toya has survived longer than they thought. Maybe it even has something to do with his secret ability to regenerate his body. With the Dr. Garaki's increasing technology, they have learned to duplicate quirks, change body structure, and many other crazy things, so it's not unlikely that All for One may have also just secretly implanted a regeneration quirk into Toya to keep him as a plan B. If Shigaraki is saved by Deku and thus no longer has the negative emotions necessary to steal One for All, then All for One must use another vessel, and that will be Toya if whatever is happening to Toya right now fixes his body problem, because then there's nothing to stop All for One from using Toya for his own goal. Let's see. So far we don't have enough information to predict which of these possibilities is most likely. Let's continue with the review. But before my partner continues with this review of My Hero Academia, please take a moment to leave a like and check out our new channel where we upload all kind of funny reactions and other fun videos. Thank you.
Let's continue with a chapter review of Boku no Hero Academia. After Burnin reported that Dabi has been arrested, the news spread across the battlefield. All the heroes on Kamino, the place where the battle against Toya took place, began to celebrate and praise Shoto for defeating the Blue Flames. Motivated by this victory, they take on the Nomu that Toya had at his side to clear the district of the enemy and finish the first battle. The heroes are reassured and believe that they ended up in one of the easier blocks, since they were not sent to the same place as Kunieda or the other dangerous escapees from Tartarus. To be honest, I think they kind of underestimate how dangerous Toya really was at that point. But whatever, they should have said that they were lucky they ended up with Shoto, who basically saved their asses. As the fighting continues, All Might watches everything in the broadcast room and is on the verge of tears. He says things are working out in their favor even though Deku was sent to the wrong place. So he announces to all the battlefields that Shoto has defeated Todoroki Dabi. Oh man, we all know that before things get really bad, there always seems to be going well at first, until a big twist occurs that changes the whole situation. My Hero Academia follows exactly this typical path of plot development, so we can expect something terrible to happen very soon. The scene changes to the ruins of Jaku Hospital, where Gigantomachia is being held captive. We see Mount Lady, Ashido, Minieta, Kodai, Yanagai, and Horenoki. They all rejoice at the news of Shoto's victory. At that moment, a member of the Liberation Front who killed Midnight suddenly appears. Emotions run high, and as if that wasn't enough, he says that even though their plan was ruined, the heroes are just wasting human resources. It doesn't get any more evil than that. And then this guy says something that he will later wish had never left his mouth. He said that this is the time of liberation and that those who try to interfere will be trampled upon, just as it happened to one of the teachers. Of course, he was referring to Midnight in this. Right after saying this, Ashido turns to gaze to him with the face we have never seen from her before, and Kirishima also appears at her side. Both are ready to take on the villain who killed Midnight and punish him for what he just said. This will be very satisfying. Another change of location to Takuba National Stadium, where the students have taken the preliminary license exam. We see Ojiro, Sato, Suburaba, and Sero. And then we see the flying UA with Bakugo smiling and saying that it was obvious that Shoto would win this. It's nice to see Bakugo constantly showing his recent character developments and acknowledging the abilities of others instead of just talking about himself. The focus then shifts to the parking lot where it all began, with Fat Gum and Aoyama surrounded by giant flowers. Both face Kunieda, the fugitive from Tartarus mentioned early in the chapter. Kunieda analyzes the hero's strategy and finds that they have divided the villains according to their compatibility with each hero's quirk, but those who did not fit into any of these blocks were simply left in the parking lot. Kunieda turns out to be the new hitman sent by All For One to kill Aoyama, and besides him, all the other remaining villains will try to do the same, probably because Aoyama basically betrayed All For One. And then the scene changes again, this time to the front of the central hospital. Mike yells that Shoto has defeated Dabi, while Shoji tries to dodge the attacks of a giant spinner. In the flashback we discussed earlier in this video, we also saw Spinner agree to receive another quirk, which could explain his gigantic form. Spinner commands all mutant type quirk users from the Liberation Front, just as we predicted, because he represents the discrimination of all mutant quirk users. And the last place we see this chapter is Gunga, where Endeavor reacts to the news of Shoto's victory with an expression that can't really be explained, which again is understandable. After all, his two sons have been fighting each other, and as if that wasn't bad enough, it was also partly his fault. He can't be happy about this news, but he can't be sad either. There is no reason for him to be angry and no reason for him to be relieved. Nothing that would have happened would have changed his reaction. All he can do now is defeat All For One. Even All For One wonders if it's a relief or sadness, and harks one's endeavor not to listen, because as we all know, All For One plays emotional manipulation every time he faces one of his enemies. It's his main strategy. All For One goes on to say that it was Endeavor's decision to ignore Toya and put the responsibility on Shoto, and right now he's trying to convince himself that it was the right thing to do. He concludes by saying, "That's why you're gonna lose, number one." Typical evil mind games All For One is always playing, and then he proves once again that he never disappoints in being a disgusting human being. He turns his fingers into different things. A black goo comes out of one, a small head grows out of another, sickle-shaped objects come out of the third, something like fire or maybe a liquid comes out of the fourth, and the last one turns into horns. End of the chapter. It looks like we'll actually see a bit of the All For One fight, but I wouldn't be surprised if the next chapter also showed what happened to Toya. Let us know in the comments below what you think happened to Toya, and also tell us what you think about the new My Hero Academia chapter. That's it for today, folks. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to smash the like button, and if you're new to our channel, make sure you subscribe with the notification bell turned turned on. See you guys in the next video. Yami out.